Welcome, everyone. We have a new attendee today. Kit, did you want to quickly just give a quick introduction and we can go around and do the same?
Sure. I am a developer. I currently am looking for a project, and I know Rob, and he suggested this one, and I'm like, tell me more.
Great. I'm Ray. We were in Slack a little bit. I'm the software product manager on web monitoring, so just always happy to see new faces on our meetings. We can go in. The meetings go pretty fast, I think I mentioned, and they're pretty dense. We get deep in the weeds because we only have half an hour every week because everyone is busy. But we can follow up later, and if anything is sort of unclear, you want to talk more about things, because hopefully there's a lot to talk about, and we also have like plans in the future that we're sort of going in process. So don't get discouraged if you get a little lost. We'll get you up to speed as quickly as we can. Kevin, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kevin. I've been working on the UI, so just front-end dev stuff, since last March or so, and I'm in San Diego, California. Ray, you're probably going to have to tell people what order they go.
Yeah, or you could, yeah, well, I'll just go along. Pfeiffer.
Hi, I'm one of, I think, 3 Dans on the project, so Pfeiffer is a good way to figure out who's who. I'm pretty new to the project, but I do full stack development and mainly focusing on web monitoring. Oh, we only have 2 Dans. Okay, I'm not Dan Allen, so yeah.
The Dan chart is down and to the right. It's very bad.
What about Dan Brackett? About that guy joined.
No, he quit too. So
Yeah.
Actually, we're down from 4 back down to 2. It's terrible.
He was trouble, so he left. Totally.
Hi, Kit. I'm Tole. I help lead the analyst work. So this is the team of volunteers that actually scour through environmental, climate, energy websites and try and disseminate information broadly to the public. So we are very excited about the dev work and hoping that the tight feedback loop improve the software tools so that the analysts can do a better job holding government accountable.
And Rob, you might not need the introduction, but
Yeah, Kit, you already know me, but I guess I'm the person who's poked around the longest on the most parts of this thing, so all the terrible mess is my fault.
yeah, and then there's another Dan Allen, who's another core contributor maintainer to the project too, but he's traveling today, so he wasn't able to make it. Great. So why don't we jump into the agenda, and I'll share my screen, and then we can just start going through everything. All right. Can everyone see that? Cool. So Zoom is acting really weird, but okay. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that the Packard grant was submitted, and we should know in a few weeks of what's happening. But I mean, they've been very supportive. Chad, our contact, gave us very direct feedback on our draft proposal, and so things are looking very promising. And if everything goes to plan, we should go through and be approved and get money in April. And then with that, there was also another preliminary call. I wasn't on it, but with Doris Duke, and they're equally interested, probably not as much money, but they're more focused on the data together in the web monitoring work, which is great. So that would probably start in May or something if it went through. So it's hopefully we're going to get closer to that sort of like minimal sustainable level of funding to get developers paid, and just to sort of smooth out some of the workload. And then also, actually, this isn't on the list, but the amendment to Climate Central for that 15K. We finally have a draft of the amendment. It just took a lot of like sort of figuring out who did what and wrangling. So there's a draft in front of both Public Lab and Climate Change, and hopefully they'll sign off on that, and then we'll get money. So just things always take longer than you want. And then Kevin mentioned he wanted to talk briefly about the steering committee nominations. There's talk about having members, some people from the web monitoring team, and both the analysts and developers potentially being on a 4-month rotation. So, Kevin, did you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think everybody knows right now, but I was planning on just taking a break from the development work for maybe like 1, 2, 3 months or so. But I still wanted to be involved with Edgy, so I thought that I could throw my hat in the ring as the secretary note taker on the steering committee, just so I can still, just keep up to date with everything, and but not have it be a huge time commitment, and I can just sit and listen and take notes, which is what I'm the best at, right? So I was just curious what people's input and if they had any thoughts about that.
Yeah. We also might even maybe try to find like 2 people to do it, so it's not like you have to be there every week or something and spread it around or something. But yeah, I think having a dedicated person would help too.
Well, I know there's because the positions that Toli and Andrew and Rebecca are vacating are like much more. I don't know which actual positions that they're vacating. I assume that they're much more involved. But I felt like I could just add like a additional perspective viewpoint onto the steering committee, which they felt like it sounded like that's what they would like. They wanted more diversity. So
yeah.
Just quickly to chime in, the 3 of us, Rebecca, Andrew, and I didn't have explicit positions on the steering committee, but I guess Andrew and I were representing the upside monitoring analysts and doing our best to talk about some of the dev work. I think basically your suggestion sounds great. Excited that you're interested. I think a good voice at the mix.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I also because they were talking about needing more dev involvement, and so I have enough understanding where I could be that bridge between steering committee and web monitoring, when those type of topics come up.
Great. Toli, do you have a quick analyst update?
Yeah, analyst update. Monitoring work is ongoing. Liz Olpe still coordinating 7 of her students to look back at EPA regional offices, and then moving on to NASA and NOAA, which is really exciting. They're looking at kind of 1-year analyses to see if anything's changed pre-inauguration. A lot of changes popping up across the board that we need to think about how to consolidate into maybe larger reports. To that end, there will be a research team meeting on Friday at 2 p.m. I think exploring some of the initial projects, some exciting directions, and I believe a of interest to folks here may be something that Eric Knopf is leading, and that's work doing, we've talked about in the past, that it's more quantitative term analysis across large subdomains. He's already got a script that he's working with, but I'm sure that he could learn from you all. So if you're interested in that, 2 p.m. on Friday, and hopefully this is going to be an ongoing weekly thing. I'm also leading a report writing training session at 11 a.m. on a Friday. Certainly no real reason for you all to come to that unless you all of a sudden want to write really boring technical reports. But just to let you know that that is kind of ongoing effort to train more members of the analyst team. Currently there's some bottleneck in terms of report writing and reviewing process. So this excited that 4 of the analysts are going to be getting trained on that. So stay tuned for those developments. And we'll be using this training process to also get a few of the reports that are on deck out. Yeah, so excited about all those things. And yeah, just a quick note, maybe later down. Thanks, thanks for the offer to help with the Page Freezer blog post. That was me dropping the ball. I said I was going to do that in January, and now it's not January anymore. So I definitely want to make sure we get that out. I'm happy to work with you on that, Kevin. Thank you again.
Cool. Kevin, do you have any other updates on the dev side?
No, I think I just reviewed a PR, but I haven't. Like I said, I've been trying to back off from too much dev work right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly chime in. I'm still working on that Internet Archive health check script. It's almost done, at least a version of it, where it'll run like locally and with 5 random links to see if there's been a scrape in the last like set amount of time, like 72 hours or something. And what I might do is like just write some tests for that and then post it, and then maybe do turning it into like a cron file and an email alert like as a second part. But I just want to sort of share that first part initially, and then I can work on the second part later, just to sort of break it up. But maybe it'll make more sense after I post the script. So hopefully.
I was just going to say it might make sense to integrate it with Sentry, since we're using Sentry for all the error tracking now.
Okay.
Rather than necessarily email.
Okay, great. That's good to know. So then I'll have some questions about Sentry integration. But let me share the first script first, and then just make sure that's okay, and then we can do sort of like the fancier cron stuff and Sentry stuff. Dan, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. I still just have that one issue assigned to me, which I have not. I merged to update it with master, but I'm still like I'm realizing that it's a little bit tied into error handling generally, and I might want to just like have a brief chat with Rob about why. For some reason, it seems to be entering in some kind of loop where like it keeps requesting stuff from Google Docs, and then I hit my usage limit. I don't know. So there's like how we should handle different kinds of non-assignment state, and then connected to that is like when we actually check Google Docs, how to do that in a way that doesn't run up against usage limits. So anyway, it's just to say, it's like, I thought that issue was going to be a lot simpler than it turned out to be for me.
Yeah, just hit me up whenever on chat.
Cool.
Okay, Rob?
So there's a bunch of PRs across all the repos that are really needing somebody to take a look at them. So there's sort of the two sides of the coin on handling different kinds of content or content that we can't diff. On the processing side, on the actual diffing server, knowing when and how to sort of stop early, which probably really just needs review from Dan, who's not here. But on the UI side, better splitting out the types of diffs we allow somebody to ask for and what we present based on the kind of content, and then not requesting those diffs. And there's sort of a side question of like when or should we at all fall back to like just presenting the raw content when we request a diff if it comes back with an error message. And then like the other big one is on DB. So one of those two major issues for Internet Archive support and for better support and deduplicating pages and stuff with Virginista also is handling multiple sites or agencies per page, which are now like, there was a big discussion about it. Instead of agencies, we now have an idea of maintainers of a page. And there can be many of them rather than just the one agency. And then site as a concept is sort of going away, and we're adding tags, and existing sites will become just like a tag named site : whatever. So 80% of that work is done. And it really, like, there's a bunch of sort of open questions about whether the approach for certain parts of it are correct, that I don't want to do the last 20% of sort of rote stuff unless we feel like that's the right thing. I think I would love to have anybody who's interested in that topic or interested in the API and whether what the API is spitting out is reasonable, take a look at that, because the big questions are like, how does this look from the API perspective of trying to get data, and also from the API perspective of what that data structure looks like and how it fits together, if it makes sense. Like a code review would also be great, but like we have already established the problem of that repository being basically non-reviewable by anybody. So really the biggest questions are sort of, I've tried to enumerate them in that PR, just like, do these things make sense, and are they the right approach, or should we be doing it differently? And then at some point, and I guess this is again like a bigger one for Dan, who's not here, is we need to find a time to sit down and talk about this whole issue around like proxying the content out and processing it not on the client side. So, because that has security issues which prevent us from displaying it correctly, because the browser won't let it request certain things when we do that.
Is that that's a 0.02 issue, the proxy?
I don't think it's a 0.02 issue. Nobody is saying that their work is undoable because of the really poor rendering of some pages.
Right.
In the short-term solution for that, where it is really hard to do, is to still have that sort of like strip styles and scripts button. This isn't, so I don't think this is 002 as a requirement, but it is a pretty big deal. And it's a huge architectural question.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Okay. And I think we can maybe, we'll just quickly, go through the AI page reader, several updates, and then we can return to that, because I think it's also sort of touching upon a larger question of like, just making sure we're putting our scarce resources amongst UI improvements, but then also making sure that we start working towards the AI ingestion referencing diffs and get off Virginista. So just quickly, I had a good conversation with Mark from AI last week. So we got the Slack channel. Oh, sorry, were you done, Rob? Or
yeah, I was done. I was just
okay.
confused, and I realized you meant Internet Archive, not AI.
Oh,
Sorry.
did I say, yeah, right, right. Yeah, not ready for machine learning, sorry. Yeah, Dan might not know this, and Kit's frozen. I don't know if we lost her or not, but Dan, we had a really nice conversation with Internet Archive, and they have a Slack channel too. I don't know if you're on it. Like they have their own account. If you okay. Hi. They have their own Slack account, and they created a channel for us in their account, which has some of their employees on it, which is I think really cool. And the first, and they've got they're strapped for resources too. But the first thing they mentioned was to have one of their DevOps guy take a look at the Ansible playbook after Dan Allen works on that. And they're using Ansible too, so I think hopefully he'll have good insights and sort of can give us a thumbs up or a little guidance on like, you might want to try to do this. And that would be really helpful, I think. So that's hopefully just the beginning of a longer relationship with them and deeper relationship as we sort of move getting our data from them as well. The PagerDuty blog post is in process, as we just talked about earlier. And then also I just wanted to quickly say I had a nice call with the Cyber Law Clinic at Harvard on Friday, and they're going to help us work on a sort of terms of use document, which will be great as more partners start using it, and then eventually when there's people in the public say much longer term, we can start thinking about first of all sort of our liability issues that we want to sort of clarify, but then also if there are other sort of terms of use on how we want users to use the software, and potentially even like the reporting, they can work on that too. And I think in a thread Rob mentioned, that's something where it was a much broader conversation, particularly with something like the reports. The analysts and the writers of the reports will want their input on how they want their work to be used. So that's all in process, and that'll be sort of working with them through like April. Hopefully we'll have like a draft of something by then. Great. Any questions on that stuff? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, just a quick point for those that may not know. I'm really excited to announce the launch of the Web Integrity Project of the Sunlight Foundation. So that's work that Andrew Bergman and I and our co-founder Rachel Bergman have started. We'll be using a lot of the methodology that Edgy website monitoring team developed, and hopefully really want to be on great terms with the devs here and find a way to maybe be like the first pilot and like a friendly way to pilot the like partner working on and using the platform and think about different ways to do that. So looking forward to finding good ways and channels to communicate there. Maybe nothing to discuss explicitly now, but just to say that excited to find good ways to do that.
We have a guinea pig when we need it.
Exactly.
Great, thanks, Toli. We've got a few more minutes. And so this is obviously a broader conversation, but I did want to sort of bringing it up, and it's too bad that Dan Allen isn't here for it. But I did mention in Slack, I think Rob defined sort of, sub goals to get to 0.02, which is to get off Originista and start, working off of data from the Internet Archive is great. And there were three things. One was the UI. One was getting the data from Internet Archive. And then three, which is huge, is testing to make sure things are resilient and we feel confident when we flip the switch that, where the analysts can do the work and we have all the data we need. So, after the analysts were using, in the UI, in Scanner, a lot, we got lots of great feedback. Stuff was bubbling up just by having lots of people look at it and trying to do the work, which is really great. But, we can also sort of, I want to make sure we don't let, perfect get in the way of the good or good enough, particularly when, the AI stuff is, there's still a lot of probably work to be done because there's always more work than you think there is. And the testing, obviously, we want some cycles to go through just to make sure, again, all the analysts are sort of working with that data, and we're confident that the data is there. And it's just nice to have a team of people just hammer it and kick the tires for a couple weeks so we can feel confident. So with that, just any general reactions or thoughts or approaches?
I guess my question to the devs, and mainly this is mostly for Rob, is just, and this was, I guess, addressed briefly before. Do you feel like there are big hurdles that the analysts are coming up with that mean that, we're not ready to move off? Like the diffing is still problematic. From my perspective, just from following along the channel and from feedback, it seems like people are really excited about the new features and think that there's certainly parity or improvement on what Versionista can offer, with the exception of a few things, maybe like PDF diffing, which isn't extremely high priority. You guys have found some pretty great ways to go around that by saying if things are identical or not. I think those things would be really helpful. So I just was curious to get any of your impressions of that and others.
For my part, my struggle, and maybe this is just because I don't have enough time to go through the sheets myself all the time, but my struggle is understanding, like we definitely hear feedback from the analysts that like the new features and stuff are really great, and we have a bunch of things where we do stuff way better than Versionista does, but understanding whether and how often we're just absolutely failing. And the converse case of like, well, you have this really fancy thing, but also in this basic situation, I can't use your tool to do the job. And I worry that a little bit of that is caused by the fact that we have that very helpful fallback link to Versionista. Because I can just say for my part, being the person who nannies the servers and nobody else taking that on, that we have like serious reliability issues, but nobody complains about it, despite the fact that I absolutely know, I would say like somewhere around 0.75 times a week, the differ gets locked up. And if that gets locked up for long enough, then all the requests to the API get locked up. And you literally can't do anything in the app. But nobody complains about it. They just like find their way around it without, and that's nice and generous of them to basically be saying, well, we know they're still working on it, so I'm not going to worry about the fact that it's like suddenly inaccessible or super slow or whatever. But it also is anti-helpful to us figuring out when and how often it's actually failing to do the job, and sets us up for a situation where, like, if we pull out that link and turn off Versionista, there's probably a whole bunch of times and situations that we don't know that's suddenly going to be, that's going to go from no big deal because analysts aren't saying anything to an absolute failure and they can't do their job. And like I know those things are happening because I watch the servers lock up every so often and have to fix it. And I show up in chat and go like, whoever it is that's having problems, it should work now. But nobody has posted in chat that like, what's up? Everything's not working, even though I know everything is not working. So like I just worry about the hidden problems that we're not hearing about that like put us in a situation to think everything's okay, and then we turn stuff off, and that like railroads everything into the ground.
Do you have a reaction?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Totally.
No, I was just thinking on the fly while you were talking, is like there are ways that we can start like weaning people off in kind of testing as we're doing that at the same time. And like I'm thinking like removing the Versionista link would be kind of a little bit sneaky, but maybe not doing that, but having like a pop-up window where you have to actually type in why you're going to Versionista. I don't know, like that might be like, you want to go to Versionista? Fine, but tell us why you're doing it. It's kind of like a little bit of we're not trusting you, but it might be just like a way to enforce feedback, because I do think you're right that people are just like, oh, well, like we'll let them handle it. And
Yeah.
I think people are doing it on best intentions, but we should think about that.
I think we could try something like that too. But I also think, because it's also a little more work. I think we can also start circulating the idea that we're starting to get ready to like do the transfer. And if we, their UI feedback has been great, but we can ask them to sort of like, tone that down and say, okay, we have enough information, I think, for this next iteration to get it stable. But now we're really worried about, and our main focus now is going to be on resiliency and things like that. So if something hangs for a long time, let us know. If it's not showing up at all, let us know. If there's still new UI bugs, obviously we can ask them to fill the feedback sheets out, which they're quite diligent at. But just maybe it's a refocusing their attention too. I mean, they're all trained to sort of be looking at uptime and stuff like that. So I think they'll be good at this, right? I think it's just a matter of focus the energy and just make sure, again, like just like you were brutal with the UI changes, just be brutal about resiliency so we know where we are, and you won't hurt our feelings. You'll just be making us give the information we need to make the system more reliable.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's maybe slightly less dire that I was trying to say that I failed to articulate well is it's hard for me to tell in those sheets which problems are problems that are like, this is not so great. It's like, I'd like it to be better versus it's underperforming relative to Versionista versus I can't do my job with this.
Right.
And so I had to go to Versionista. Like there's a difference between I went to Versionista because I didn't feel like this was as good, and I went to Versionista because if I didn't have Versionista, I would be shit out of luck.
Right.
For this change. And like I'm not doing a good job understanding what things are in each of those buckets, and we have to solve the things that are in that last bucket before we can switch. And if we don't know which things are in that bucket, it's kind of hard to know that we're ready.
I can do a quick straw poll too, I think, in the team channel with the analysts, just to sort of to see if they're where their temperature check on that is. How close we are. I still can't, because sometimes things were down and Marcy said like, so I just had to go and it was just so much faster doing first news. So it was a contained thing that we knew what the problem was. But we can also try to get them to think about more minutia of like, are they just doing a fallback just to double check, or is it something where like they really had to go because they weren't sure if this was right or not? I'll post that today, and it can just be a quick straw poll and we can sort of see where they are.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this would be helpful, but I think people would be amenable to like a half-hour call if you think that's like a good way to get information out of them, Rob. Where you're just like kicking around ideas and telling you like what they have issues with or not. On the other hand, like the lack of complaints might just be that, right? At some point, we have to believe that we've sent 10 people to monitor using this UI, and we're not hearing that they're doing the monitoring work.
Right.
So.
But I think once we start circulating the idea and getting them comfortable with the idea that Versionista is actually going away, then maybe they won't be as nice, because they're like, oh well. But we'll see.
No,
we'll
definitely
see.
good to be cautious in that way.
But
Yeah.
it'll be a process.
I mean, my concern is mainly powered by the fact that there are many situations where I know it is not working and people aren't complaining.
Right.
Versus the like, oh, nobody's complaining. What don't I know? It's more like, oh, I know it's broken and nobody's complaining. So what else is broken that I don't know about that people are also not complaining about?
But just to be clear, that's like downtime at particular hours. And I don't think we should imagine that analysts are monitoring the whole week equally.
Yeah. I mean, even from the feedback sheets, I see that there's definitely a spike towards like the weekend, and then right before Monday, things are trickling in. So like it's quiet right now. Although maybe they're doing research, but
I guess I just mean like when it's having that downtime, I know when people are trying to access it during that downtime, because I get if it's totally locked, I get an email for every HTTP request that anybody's browser makes to the service.
Right.
So when it totally gets in that state once every week and a half, my inbox in a period, if people are using it, my email inbox goes from like 0 to about 150 messages over the course of half an hour or less.
Right.
And so like I know when it's down and it's under load and stopping people from doing their work.
Okay. And that could even be one person, right? I mean, they do hundreds of. I mean, they're just clicking, right? I mean, yeah. Cool. Okay, that was all very helpful. It's we ran over a little bit, but I thought this was all really useful. So thanks everyone. I'll see you in Slack if there's any other questions to follow up on. But have a good rest of the week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.